Today's video is brought to you by Card Kingdom, and right now you can get this sweet Scoop Soldier sticker when you order over at cardkingdom.com. Just mention in your order notes that you want a Scoop Soldier sticker when you go to checkout. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another Instant Deck Tech. So this week is Theros Beyond Death Week, part, I don't know, 2, 3, something like that, but we actually have tournament decks to talk about, or decks that at least have been performing in a tournament setting on Magic Online, on Magic Arena, and today's deck I'm really excited for. This is a deck called Kiora Best Everything that comes to us from Vex Toman, who took the deck to a mythic ranking in best of one standard on Magic Arena. So a best of one deck, although as a sideboard that I added as well, I think you can definitely play it in best of 3 and have tons of success with it. And I am super excited for this deck because while it is kind of a Bant Ramp deck, it is very different than what you typically see as a Bant Ramp deck and super duper spicy. So congrats to Vex Toman for making a really sweet deck, and a quick reminder before we break down Kiora Best Everything for Theros Beyond Death Standard. If you enjoy this deck and you want to see it made into videos, take a minute, click the like button, the subscribe button, leave a comment, anything you can do to support your deck, because whichever deck is most popular gets a shot at being made into videos next week. So Kiora Best Everything is a Lotus Field deck, and this is what makes this deck so unique. We've seen Bant ramp decks, Simic ramp decks before, but this was going around ramping in a really unique, really powerful, really cool way. So Lotus Field, you probably know what this card does. It taps for 3 mana, it has hexproof, so it can't really get destroyed easily. Comes into play tap, but when it comes into play, you gotta sacrifice 2 lands. Well, the idea of this deck is to use Lotus Field as an absurd ramp piece by getting around the sacrifice 2 lands effect. So we have 2 different options for this. Our best by far is Brought Back. So Brought Back was a 2-mana instant, and when we cast it and it resolves, we get to return 2 permanents that were put into our graveyard from the battlefield this turn. They come into play tap, but whatever. What this means is on turn 1 we make a land drop, on turn 2 we make a land drop, on turn 3 we float both of our mana, we play Lotus Field, we sack our 2 lands, then we Brought Back, we get those lands immediately back, so we're going to be going into turn 6 with 6 mana. That is a lot of mana to have access to that early in the game. We can also do the same trick with Tails End. Tails End just stifles the Lotus Field effect. We counter the trigger. So these are our main ramp spells, just jumping us up the curve mana-wise really, really quickly. We also have some other tricks with Lotus Field in Kiora Behemoth Beckoner. So Kiora, we played this in our Mono Blue Thassa's Oracle Devotion deck last week. I actually had a couple copies of Lotus Field there as well. Very good with Lotus Field because we can tap it for 3 mana, untap it, tap it again. So that's 6 mana from 1 land if we have Kiora out to untap it. Plus, our deck has a lot of big creatures, which are going to trigger Kiora to draw us cards. As far as the rest of our ramp, we have Growth Spiral in Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath. So Growth Spiral just lets us draw a card, put extra land into play. That's fine. It does help us ramp even faster. Uro is really insane with this deck for a couple of reasons. One is, it's a big creature that triggers Kiora, so even if we are sacrificing our Uro, it comes into play, we draw a card, we gain 3 real life, we put a land into play, and we get an extra card draw from Kiora. That is very powerful. Secondly, we actually could fill our graveyard with Lotus Field and our other cheap spells, but Lotus Field, sacrificing 2 lands, if we're not brought backing them, actually helps us get Uro back into play. So these cards just ramp us into our big finishers. Speaking of big finishers, what this deck is really built around is Kiora Best Sea God. That's where the name comes from. So Kiora Best Sea God, obviously limited bomb, but actually some constructed potential as well, especially in a deck like ours, where with our good draws, we can potentially be Kiora Best Sea Godding maybe turn 4, turn 5, which is very, very frightening. So 7 mana comes into play, makes an 8/8 Kraken with hexproof, already a fine deal. Then the next turn we get to tap all of our opponent's lands. Permanents say, oh, don't untap for the next turn. Then we can gain control of a permanent an opponent controls. With the last lore counter, any permanent we can steal a land. So it's basically an 8/8 hexproof that kind of fogs our opponent for a turn, a super fog that also does an Agent of Treachery, but it's an 8/8 hexproof. So this card is absolutely busted, and part of what makes it so sweet in this deck is it works with are brought back. So what we really want to do in the late game, and it's so cool the synergies of this deck, brought back, early game ramps us with Lotus Field, late game, we play our Kiora Best of Sea God, we go through all the modes, we get an 8/8, we tap our opponent's stuff, we steal their thing, then we just cast brought back, then we get back Kiora Best of Sea God, we make another 8/8, then the next turn we tap our opponent's stuff, so we can kind of just loop Kiora Best of Sea God, essentially keep our opponent tapped out of the game more or less permanently, while also making 8/8 hexproofs and yoinking our opponent's best stuff. So that's the big finish that we're setting up for. Otherwise, Hydroid Crosses, Kenrith, give us some life gain / card draw creatures. Kenrith, we don't have all the colors of mana, so it's mostly drawing his cards or gaining his life. Hydroid Crosses, of course, we make a lot of mana with our Lotus Fields and Kioras and all that stuff, all of our ramp. So we cast it, draw a bunch of cards, gain a bunch of life. Otherwise, rounding out the deck, we have a couple of giants. Realm Cloak Giant just gives us a Wrath that doesn't kill all of our creatures, because we also have Theros the Sunstorm, and Euro is also a giant. So we're kind of like Bant Giants to some extent as well. So it's a Wrath, also a 7/7 creature that can be a finisher. Theros is actually pretty sweet in this deck. It's kind of a ramp spell, reducing the cost of our expensive stuff. So that means Kiora Best of Sea God, gonna cost 6 instead of 7, which is a nice upgrade. Hydroid Cross is a little bit cheaper, plus it makes our big things uncounterable, and it's just a flash flying on curve blocker. Otherwise, one copy of Heliod's Intervention, I don't know what I think about this card in the main deck. It can gain us a ton of life with all of our mana. We can easily gain like 20 life off of it, plus we just blow up all the artifacts and enchantments. Mana base wise, Lotus Field, we already talked about this one. Fabled Passage, some basic lands, some shock lands, some scry lands. As far as the sideboard, for aggro we have Lovestruck Beast, just makes a big blocker and a small blocker early in the game, so really good at gumming up the board against any sort of aggressive deck. Shifting Ceratops helps against control since it can't be countered, and then a bunch of hate cards, Ether Gust for all the Nissa Simic style decks, Devout Decree for red and black aggro decks, Mystic Dispute as a good counter, especially good against blue decks, but fine otherwise. And that is the ridiculous ramp plan of Kiora Best Everything. And that's been our Instant Deck Tech for today. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.